Let's try this again after trying to burn myself. This is Assyrian Wars. I'm going to give this a shot by Udo Greb Game Design. I believe the game itself was designed by Udo Greb. It's I'm going to apologize right off the bat because I haven't been able to understand the rules yet. I've read through them once. I've got some grasp, but there's so much here that's so iffy. And you can tell from the very beginning, from what's included in the game, that obviously they knew the rules weren't sufficient to teach the game, to learn the game from. You've got not only a tutorial kind of playthrough type thing, but which I tried to read through, but the only way to handle those I'm unwilling to take. But they also have a simple rules game here. The truth is, this is probably one of the worst rule books I've seen that appears to be for a mostly complete game. It is... Some of it may be the language, a translation by someone whose language is not initially English. You could say the same with, say, the AWE, the Zurwish stuff. But in terms of organization, I'm not sure that there's as much that's just like, ambiguous, although there are definitely places where things feel pretty ambiguous to me. For example, I'm looking at the rules for Force Pool, and they talk about place all available regular units of that country into the force pool. Some units are not available in the beginning, but enter the force pool through certain cards. I can find no reference to such things and to the force pool itself here on the setup. This is the scenario setup for the campaign game. There's also two other scenarios included. Apparently there's another scenario you got if you pre-ordered the game. God forbid. Getting a mess like this through pre-order, man, I'd be pretty pissed. I bought it used and probably paid too much for it. It's kind of a rarity. The reason I wanted this game, first of all, there's nothing quite like it, out there. It is perhaps the heaviest CDG that I've seen yet. There's, I don't know how many pages of rules. There's it looks like there's about 30 pages of rules in the book, in the main rule book, but those are separated into these columns with fairly small type, so it's more like a 60-page to 90-page rule book in GMT speak. That's pretty damn big for a CDG. Interestingly enough, they have a page numbering system, but no numbers on the pages. And there's a lot of little stuff like that. And that's not in particular something. Yeah, if you go back to the this is the index in the back, and it's got the words that are used overwritten to each other. No quality control on here at all. Some numbers, but most of them have no number, nothing. It's just like, here's a bunch of words we decided to print on a sheet of paper with some dots. No reference into the rules at all from that. It really looks like a fucking slipshod job in so many ways, which is a shame because the counter components and the artwork are nicely done. The map is kind of pretty, little computer generated kind of thing, but I find it an attractive game. The card quality seems good, but man, okay. So why do I want this? Well, there's two games that I can think of I have on the subject. Well, maybe a third if Ancient Conquest has any historical validity. I'm not sure how much it does, but I haven't gotten to that yet. King David, which was a fun game by Clash of Arms, but very light, and the God Kings, which was a pretty bad Compass release, which pretty much convinced me I'm not going to buy any of their stuff until I hear more of it. Compass seems very hit and miss to me, but just from what I've heard, as well as my own experience, I've had one decent game that I had gripes about, and then one No Peace Without Spain, which you know, in and of itself is a good enough game up there. But this is sort of my, you know, hey, let's give Udo Grab a try. I actually have some of his magazine games too, and they have similar problems in terms of layout and formatting. The layout looks okay, but the truth is it doesn't really terribly work well. I think the bigger thing though is there's almost no real feel for what's going on here from reading the rules, or at least from my reading of the rules. I started setting it up, and I think I'm mostly set up, but I want to hit the rules because I'm dragging my feet and unwilling to play this at all. I figure if I start putting video up, I'll kind of have to play. Okay, so the core of the game is the CDG side of things, and it's kind of an interesting part. First of all, we have some neat little pieces to it. I think this is a Napoleonic Wars innovation. And this game came a little after that. You have these home cards that each player has in their hand at the start of each turn, I guess. I'm a little confused. Yeah, I think so. The grand campaign is only 5 turns long, for whatever that matters. You know, I mean, that could still be a fairly long game, and I have the feeling it is, given the amount of smaller scenarios they gave, etc. So each player has, you know, a couple of these for their players, and there's 5 players in the game. Assyria, who's sort of the big baddie, in a way that he isn't. Assyria isn't in the God Kings. This is a game about Assyria's height and downfall, really. They start out pretty close to their height, and the concept is everyone else is largely in an anti-Assyria camp. In the same way Napoleonic Wars kind of has a pro-French, anti-French, like War and Peace did. The Medes, Egypt, Babylon, and Edom. Okay. The cards themselves, you're going to get different people get different amount of cards. It represents a certain economic strength, again, based on the Napoleonic Wars. And then Here I Stand and such was based on that as well. You have up here the amount of action points. Yeah, we can't call them ops points in this game. We got to make up new letters for them, right? That the card could provide. And you have this similar deal as you do with most CDGs where you have an event you can play. But the difference here is the event has a cost, which is listed down here. If you choose to play it for the event, instead of getting the positive number of, you know, action points, you end up getting a negative amount. Okay, how does that work? Well, there's going to be some capability to store up action points from your cards. When you play them, you can take actions and you can also bank some points. And you also get an income of action points separate from the cards itself, which I find kind of clever. Okay. I'm probably not going to go through the details of the rules, in part because I don't know them, and just me trying to read through this mess. Okay. The other things that can happen, some of the cards are going to be plus cards, and they have a little plus on them. That means that you can play one of those along with another card. Normally you only play one card per impulse, and the impulses of the different, not just players, but powers are all related here, and you'll just be moving this down the track as players go. So you'll be playing a card, and maybe 2 if you want that. You must play one. And then you use the points for various activities, or you trigger the event, and can still use whatever other points you have available for various events. Okay, one other thing that can be done is there's this preemption marker. Whoever has the most cards in their hand at any given time has the ability to preempt. In between 2 powers, or two powers is the wrong word for this because the powers are the player powers, but I guess countries is the word they want. But in between 2 countries playing, if the one that's due to come has cards or the ability to play, i.e. they have points to buy a card, then And that's weird too, because you're only allowed to save 4 points, but it takes 5 points to buy a card. I'm not quite sure how that all works, but you get an income at the beginning of your phase, so I think that's how that goes. Anyway, if the next player has the opportunity to take a full turn, oh no, but not if they have actions that are going to take place no matter what during their turn. Those you can't preempt. You can essentially declare your preemption, and then you can jump in and play your own action in that time to give you kind of, I don't know, a momentum type position in the game. All right. And the minor countries, like in Napoleonic Wars, have their own home cards and may also be getting cards of their own in play. They're not all in play at the beginning of the game. In fact, most of the minors are not. Israel is, and Urartu, and maybe Persia, because it's not listed as inactive here, but it doesn't seem like it's high enough. I think it has to be on the alliance chart to actually be active, so that could just be a typo, I think, and that's how I'm playing it on the setup, unless I can find something different as I go. Okay, well, that all sounds pretty simple. And then if the country is the last one with playable cards, but playing another card would cause consecutive impulses would cause a consecutive impulse, the turn ends. Now, I believe consecutive impulses actually flow between two turns, which means Assyria has a particular worry about this. And they have the most cards, they're the most likely to be affected by it anyway. But basically, if you're the last person with cards left, and nobody else is going to have a chance to go, if you play a card, if you've just played, you can't play again. And if you play a card and you're going to be, if you're due to play and you're going to be the first player on the next turn, you just don't get to go, and the turn ends at that point. However, it's possible that people might get bonus cards that extend the turn. Between any two game turns, there's going to be an interphase where certain political aspects take place in particular, but a number of things here, including army relocation, which is one of the things that worries me about the God Kings. I really griped the hell out of that, where, I don't know what the scale on this is. I think turns are significantly long, but I'm not sure they even tell you. There's no turn record track, but there's a counter to go on the turn record track. Maybe this is. No, this is some kind of combat thing that I don't even know. It's to track combat losses. And then there's these minor tributes, which probably are supposed to go up here. Give me a little bit more visibility. How you're supposed to set up, not handled in the rules. Very little explanation of this setup. This is just a really hard game to approach. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything about scale, about the size of turn, any discussion of shit like that. It's like, try to figure this out. And I don't remember any such discussion in the designer's notes. The game consists of 5 turns. Okay. Each of which is basically the reign of a king, which might make some sense why there's this redeployment phase, because there is really a bracketing between the different turns. Each one is supposed to be its own Assyrian king. Another factor, though, is that you have the ability to cause that kind of redeployment in your turn itself. So it's not like it's, something that only happens in the interface. And clearly, you know, the disruption that would happen with a new Assyrian king taking the throne makes more sense than, hey, every 5 years or every 25 years or whatever you want to say, you get to redeploy all your armies for no apparent reason. So there may not be an actual time scale here, which actually works well, I would think. Okay. The best way to learn the game is to ignore the rules. Yeah. And then play the tutorial. Yeah, well, that'll give you a lot of the key little, you know, mechanical aspects, the tutorial will, of what's kind of going on. I've read it. I haven't played it out on the table. But it's not going to give you too much about, you know, the broad sweep of the campaign game. And there's not a lot outside of, there's some play notes for the different powers, which kind of give you a little bit of a hint about what the game's kind of going to be about. And I have read those. All right. Yeah. Each player is going to get their home cards, and they also get these army group cards, which is where they're going to be allowed to keep a couple of different types of, basically they can hold their armies, they can have multiple armies in an army group by using those, and that is really the only way you can manage a multinational force. So that's of some interest here. Okay, let's take a look at what the sequence of play is. So first thing is initiate turns. If you have any mercenaries on the map or in the regroup box, this is where damaged units kind of go, or routed units. They get disbanded at this point. And I guess in the force pool and on the home cards of inactive minor. All countries, yeah. So I guess you lose all your mercenaries. Assyria, however, because they have the first standing army, is allowed to keep their mercenaries on the map. If they do so, they have to rehire them in the first impulse. If they don't rehire them, they're going to get disbanded just like everyone else's. It's just that they get to leave theirs deployed. If Assyria has more than 8 mercenaries on the map, it can keep hiring more than 8 or all of them. Whatever that means. Assyria gets new random mercenaries in the first impulse, 8 minus however many it kept from last turn. Well, I don't think that really works with the last statement, but okay. If Assyria has more than 8 on the map, it may keep hiring more than 8 or all of them. I guess what that means is if somehow you end up with additional mercenaries, you don't get dropped down to the 8 as long as you keep paying for them. I think that's what the intention is. Other powers get 4 mercenaries that they'll be allowed to build, and minors get 1. And basically these just go into a cup, and they're going to be shaken up, and you get to draw them each turn. And that's going to be your force pool mercenary edition that you're able to just buy additional of. On turn 1, it was already done during setup. Okay, that may be in the preparations thing, which clarified where, you know, the counters should be, although maybe not all of them. Okay, next we go to tribute. Some powers will have to give tribute at the beginning of the scenario. Basically, between players, there's the opportunity to give tribute. Now, Assyria is the big baddie in this game. Everybody's got to pay Assyria tribute, or Assyria has a bone to pick with you. And it's a bone to pick with you that, like, they can't let go. They can't. It's not just like this is a free casus belli or something. No, they actually have to go beat you up, or else they're going to get penalized for not making you pay tribute, which is kind of cool. For minors, if they're not controlled by a major power, they make a little roll to see whether or not they defy Assyria. And likewise, Assyria has to punish them if they fail, if they decide not to. And basically the number based on whether or not you want to give tribute as a minor is based on the defensive value of the city. Now, we have a lot of numbers on the city. If a city has a little number up above it like this, that's the economic bonus of that city. I think the number inside here is the defensive value. And that the higher that is, the more likely they're going to refuse tribute because they're safe. They think they're safe within the walls. Persia has no cities, so they will always pay tribute. And you're going to mark these tribute marker situations with these markers. The little black marker says you refuse tribute, and it means that you will be, Assyria has to go penalize you. And the white is an additional penalty to the tribute die roll. If you successfully refuse tribute last turn, you're more likely to keep refusing. If you pay the tribute, you're going to be at peace with Assyria and its allies for that turn. If Assyria ends up allying with a country, it no longer has to pay tribute. Right? Then all wars and any countries paying tribute to Assyria end immediately. Yeah, if Assyria makes an alliance, they're no longer at war. They may still have to punish them, though. So that's Assyria can declare war on a tribute payer for 10 of their action points for a minor or 15 for a major. Any tribute payments by the attacked countries to Assyria end immediately. You stop paying tribute once you're at war. Tribute's going to be recorded, I think, I'm not positive of this yet, with the economy marker. The economy marker shows your overall economy, but I don't know if that's meant just for your base economy or if it's actually to score what your economy is worth during the game. It could be either way. So, for example, over here we have an economy of 9 for Assyria. I could add the tribute to that in my head, but I think there are other modifiers to that economy marker. And it's kind of troubling because you have to kind of, you have to calculate one or the other at various times. So I'm just worried. I was hoping that this was a more fixed value, that as you lost territory would change. But I fear that maybe the map contains that information, and this is to track the overall economy, including tribute, including trade, and all kind of other factors. That's not absolutely clear to me yet. Okay, so Assyria can declare war on their tribute payers for 10 AP for minors or 15 for full powers. If you don't pay tribute to Assyria, though, they can attack you for free. They can declare war on you without having to pay. And Assyria is expected to punish those who refuse to pay tribute. If they don't, they're going to lose, that country gets a bonus on its tribute check next turn, and somewhere or another Assyria is going to be penalized 2 victory points for each person that they do not punish. All right. This is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause and take lots of breaks as I work my way through this crap. Note that when I do these long rolls introductions, most of my rolls introductions are at least as much for me as they are for anybody else, so that I can get another overview of the game. But I feel like at least they give some idea, although not the best one that could be presented to viewers. Okay, so the meat of the game is in the action phase. This is when we're alternating through here, and players or countries are playing their cards and taking their actions. And this is all the crap that you can do, for the most part, with your action points. Okay. So you're going to be able to build units in the middle of, as you need them, sort of, by paying points for them. And once you've spent the points that you wish to spend, You then pass, and the initiative goes to the next player. I'm sorry, the impulse goes to the next player, and then they get their actions. If you have no cards in hand, you can spend 5 of your action points in order to buy a card. In fact, you must. Now, you can use your stored action points, which will be marked down with one of these, maybe over on your home cards or something like that, to just indicate, hey, I got 4 points that I saved from last impulse that I went. The most important part of this is probably, okay, you retain fractions during the impulse, but then you lose them as a player. You have to pay them the whole amount at the end, but there might be multiple things that cause fractional action point costs. The most important part to this is not easy for me to find there. It's the income. And it says 6.18. Let's see if I can find it. I was going to write that in if it wasn't there. Okay, the income action points. Each phase and country collects its action point impulse at the beginning of the impulse round. And they add them to your saved points. And you can mark these with dice or with the little counters or whatever. There's no track to keep track of your current impulse points that you have available. Your income is going to be what? Unfortunately, they don't tell you. It's AP income, which is probably defined somewhere. I hope. I believe it's your economic value. But this is how good the rules are. Is that, finding a key element like that, it's not referenced and it's not noted where it really matters. So let's see if we can find it anywhere else. Let's look at eco value. That'll be on page 20, which is 3 pages past where I was. So it should be down here. Let's see if this tells us. Yeah, no, it doesn't talk about it there. Negative income, should it generate a negative income? It's going to get penalties. Yeah, unfortunately, this does not define a damn thing about it. My guess is that it is your that it's your eco value, because I don't know what else the eco value is going to be used for. But I don't think it's defined anywhere or stated anywhere in the rules that your income is that eco value. Another note that I forgot to mention: anytime you want, you can turn a regular card, like one of these, into a plus card. You just have to pay 3 action points to do so. So then you get an extra card to play. How much value is there to that? Well, probably not much if you're just using one of the cards for action points. That's probably a real easy way to waste your action points. Although you may be holding too many cards and need to divert them. So let's look at the actual, and maybe it says something back here about the income. I don't remember seeing anything about it. Most of the meat of the rules is in this section. Okay, so when you buy units, this is one of the things you're able to do. Depending on the game you're playing, if you're playing the basic game, there's really a confusion as to what's basic, what's advanced, what's optional, what's not. Like, there are optional rules in the basic rules, and then like advanced rules are said these aren't optional, that come afterwards, but they're talked about as optional. But they basically seem to be things that aren't part of this at all. Anyway, all that confusion that it drives to me, that kind of, no focus whatsoever, kind of like my talking, right? But brought to a rule book. And that's why I don't design games, because they might end up looking like this. No, they wouldn't. They would never come out because I would never get around to fixing them. So let's see. The cost for building is essentially what? 2 action points per strength point is the base cost. Now, somewhere... There we go. And that's spelled out with all the different land units at 2 times their combat strength. And basically the units, I haven't shown one, here's one, have 1 number on them, their combat strength, and then on the other side they have a weakened value. And in order to build it, you pay 2 times the base combat strength. But if you're playing with the advanced rules that aren't optional, you pay this additional penalty for building special units. And basically, every unit that has that penalty has some sort of special ability assigned with it. And you have a counter mix for each nation, which kind of reflects what that nation's best at. So some nations like Egypt have a lot of light troops and a lot of bowmen. Assyria has heavier infantry, more chariots, stuff like that. Chariots are kind of funky, and we'll look at them in a little bit. Yeah, this says quick start card. It's really just kind of a player aid card. But it does give a lot of... it's more a reference, a player aid reference than it is any kind of quick start. This doesn't help you start the game quickly. It's just a lot of the things you need to remember. And there's 2 copies of that, 1 for each player. Well, 1 for each player if you're playing in 2. Okay. Ships, though, only cost 2 APs, I believe, to build. So they're kind of cheap overall. And then you're allowed to hire... another option is you can hire mercenaries. You take it from your mercenary force pool and put it with your forces. And that's going to cost you a half an action point per strength point. You can buy leaders. Each one costs 2 action points, and you draw it at random from your pool of available leaders. You're not going to throw your kings, your named leaders, into that pool, though. Those only come in, I think, through timeline events. If a leader's killed, he can be bought again. If a king is killed, he's removed from the game. But there's also a king marker, and the whole rules about how you promote, keep, and everything with kings are somewhat ambiguous, and we'll try to figure out what they mean by them. If your units have taken damage, you can rebuild them, and that also costs 2 action points per strength point added, but there's no special penalty for better, the heavy infantry or the units with special abilities. There's restrictions here. Mercenaries only cost a half each. A regular unit can only be rebuilt if it can trace an uninterrupted path of friendly areas to a friendly controlled area. Mercenaries can be rebuilt no matter what. You can this is kind of a random in here under the rebuild. You can remove pillage markers in your areas, basically. And that costs an AP to remove a pillage 1 or to reduce a pillage 2 down to a pillage 1. Basically, if you supply your troops by pillaging, it puts a pillage marker in place. That can only go up to 2 levels, so once an area is at pillage 2, you can no longer supply by pillaging. City defenses, if they're damaged, they cost you 1 action point per level you want to repair it to. You can't repair things above what they are. If you want to buy stuff back from the regroup box, remember this is where like demoralized the routed units go, and also some raiders and stuff will go back there once they stop raiding. These are going to cost you less to replace. If the unit's at full strength, it'll be replaced at the strength it's at, and it just costs 1 AP to pull out. Mercenaries cost a half point from the regroup box, and you can actually, anyone can pull them out of there. So once mercenaries get knocked into the regroup box, they become free game for any player. And you can then rebuild your units. Movement. To move land units without a leader, you have to pay 1 AP for each unit you move for each area it moves. Except for Sealand and Medea. I think this is the Medea. And Sealand is down here. It's like a big water park for the Babylonians. Those two are going to cost 2 action points to enter. This is just land movement, I think. No, it says sea zones as well. If you move with a leader, his whole stack can move for that 1 or 2 action points. Mercenaries can't move on their own. They must have a leader with them. Otherwise, you would have no idea whose units they were. These are your mercenaries. They're all the same color. And that's why, if they go into the regroup box, they confuse the world. And thus, anyone can buy them. All friendly ships in a sea zone are considered a fleet. It costs a half action point to move them from coastal sea zone to coastal sea zone. You can't enter into the deep sea, although you can go trading with fleets, which is something different. If a land unit moves more than 4 areas in an impulse, it has to make an attrition check. Attrition comes from moving too much. It comes from not paying or pillaging to maintain forces. Some retreats will cause attrition. Trade raids cause attrition. Starting in a desert area, crossing a desert or mead connection. The mead connections are Medea. Connections are those special red ones. The deserts are, I think, these dashed lines. Let's see here. Some events may. Naval movement will not cause attrition, and leaders themselves don't check for attrition. When you check, you roll a die. If you take a 6, the unit takes a hit, which basically means it flips over or is destroyed if it's already flipped. Okay. Armies. Armies and army groups. Armies, I think, are just counters that are used to... I don't even know if I have any. This is an army group. This is an army. This is an army group, but I don't know. Armies serve almost no purpose. They're just there so that you don't have to worry about big stacks, I guess. But army groups have an actual meaning, and they have these cards to represent them. And I guess you could put the armies on these cards too. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how the armies are meant to be used and whether or not there are actually counters for them. There's, I'm on a damn tether, but I'm looking for somebody who has an army. And I'm not seeing them. So that's an army group. On the back side, we've got an army. I guess you can use the army as an army group. You can use the army group card to hold armies or something if you want to. Totally unimportant there. But an army group can hold 2 or 3 armies on the same card, which is important because leaders are only allowed to have a certain amount of people on them. We haven't extended to that, have we here? A leader's command rating is the maximum number of regular units that can be in the army. It can also contain mercenaries up to the leader's command rating. Okay, so we have to find where these values are defined because we have 2 different values for the leaders, and I haven't gone into them yet. Here we go. So the action rating, command rating is the number of units you can command. Action rating is going to affect your combat die rolls as well as interception and evasion and stuff like that. Okay. Let us see. So if you have no several leaders and no army group, the units are divided up so each leader has at least one unit, and therefore it's an army on its own. Armies are really just a leader with their units. The only reason you'd use those little army markers instead of army group markers is if you had the big stacks. In an army group, you can have 2 or 3 armies in the same camp. Remember, camps are the Assyrians and rebels. If you're neutral, you don't need an army group because you're not going to be fighting against, well, you might be fighting against a minor. It's possible you're at war with a minor or something, so that's kind of different. At least as far as I understand the rules, which is not very well. So one leader will be the commander, and he goes in the middle space here, and then he's got 2 wing nuts with him. Each of the armies has the ability to hold a number of pieces equal to its command rating. And I think movement is normal cost. If there's a king present, he's automatically going to be the commander of the army group. You can't have more than 1 king in an army group. So if you have multinational force, you're only allowed 1 king. No Leipzig or Austerlitz going on here. An army group can only, you can pick up and drop off units as long as at no time you have more unit in any of your armies than the command rating. Just trying to see if there's any restriction on what things move, but no. Right, so here's the weird thing. Because this is an attrition-based movement system, kind of like Crusades, which I covered, and some the Ancient World series by Berg, you can kind of move as far as you like, and units get apportioned their attrition based on how far they actually move. So as far as I get it, you can kind of go streaking across the map, but your army's composition changes so that you don't pay too heavy an attrition. Of course, you can streak across the map anyway if you're willing to take those attrition rolls. So that's, remember, it's only if you go more than 4 areas, and you can go as far as you like. These turns are not meant to be like, little 1-month turns or something. They're conceivably quite long, the impulses, like a campaign season or something. Or maybe not. It's all very abstract. What do we have here? An army group doesn't have to be formed. Okay, so army groups get kind of weird around here. An army group does not have to be formed if a friendly army passes through another friendly army, but it can. Costs no action points. Each army group has to have a card. If you don't have a card available, you can't form an army group, and your armies can't operate together. Multinational army groups, basically, either player involved in that multinational group can move it, as long as everybody in the group agrees. It doesn't matter who actually owns the group. Which can result in these moving faster without attrition than other units would. If there's a king, the king is still the commander, but otherwise the commander is temporarily whoever's action it is. If there's a battle, the card owner is going to, should a result of the battle, the forces of the army group card owner be completely removed and allied forces still survive, the army group is dissolved. Yeah, no shit. Any allied power can use its own unused army group card to form a new army group at that point. Countries without an army group can't form an army group, but they can join one. I'm looking for something here, but basically it's the commander of the force who gets to make the decisions. And I believe that's going to be the army group person as well. I think the army group has to be the king's army group if the king's present, but I'm not seeing anything one way or another, and I don't feel like looking too hard for that kind of esoterica. There can be multiple armies in an area that will not form into an army group in reaction to an enemy attack. Now this is funny because elsewhere in the rules it talks about army groups kind of forming to react. That doesn't look like it's allowed, but I'm not sure. If Up to 3 allied armies can defend together, but the leaders can't use their action rating for extra battle dice. Normally an army or army group, each leader involved has extra dice that they add to the battle. If there's 4 or more armies, you have to split up, and then they can be attacked separately if you wish. Garrisons can join an army to help in its relief effort. All kind of crap like that. All right. If at the first impulse of your game turn you decide you don't want your army group card, you can sell it back to the bank for 4 action points. Kind of weird thing, but the play notes say, hey, if you're Egypt, you want to do this in the first turn, because you're not going to be interfering, you're not going to be playing against Assyria, and that's when you really need your army groups. You can probably handle Gaza, which is what you're going to be attacking here. Okay. Let's see what else. You can spend an action point to move a leader from where there are no troops to another friendly controlled leader up to 8 areas away. Why the leader can only move 8 areas and troops can move as far as they like, don't ask me. Seems weird. Play at least 1 card in combination with APs from your income or from a plus card. Creates a forced march. A total of 10 AP. 1 army can be relocated an unlimited number of connected land areas within friendly territory. This will not cause attrition. The army will be finished for the impulse, though, so you can, do a strategic reallocation of your forces this way, but you can't then immediately launch an attack with them. All right. I am going to pause here for interception through combat type actions because I need a rest. Okay, let's continue on with the core combat side of things, I guess. I'm not really thrilled with this just because we do get to other actions, and combat's not really an action, but it's something that happens. Okay, so interception. When somebody enters next to you, you're allowed to try to intercept, and I think you make a roll. You roll 2 dice, you need a 7 or higher, and the modifiers are based on if the intercepting force has an action rating for his leader or no leader, he gets a penalty in that case. And then also a penalty for intercepting an enemy territory. You also get modifiers based on the advanced combat capabilities. So all cav against no cav gets a bonus, and then there's this concept of higher mobility. These, all are pretty explanatory, but there's this concept of higher mobility, which is just whoever has the mostest cav. If both sides have cav, however, that seems to only apply with mixed forces. I think there's no modifier at all if you're both cav forces, but that may be kind of an omission because elsewhere it may just say whoever has the highest mobility gets it. And high mobility is just counted by, like I said, counting the total number of points. So there are used markers. What the hell? I don't know where those are. Here we go. Okay, so you put these on an army that has already fought a battle, at which point it can't intercept for the rest of this impulse. You'll have to go to another player impulse to be able to intercept again. But there's an exception to that on overruns, right? Interception might require an attrition roll if you're going into Medea or into the Mede. I don't know if you can enter there because that's only the Medes that can go there. But if you intercept from it, maybe. Or Sealand. If you fail interception, you don't get a roll. They're not chainable. Army groups can intercept as a whole using the battle rating of the army group commander, or the components can try to intercept separately. You can't force someone to intercept as part of your army if they don't wish to. And, you know, it's the same way with movement. You can't force your army group to move with you, but you can leave someone behind. If you enter an enemy territory, the enemy can then try to evade the battle, and that also is going to be 2 dice. Here you're trying to get a 9 or more. If you're evading into friendly areas, a friendly city in the same area gives you a bonus. Leadership is again important. Something called hasty evasion. If you decide that you want to improve your chances of evading, you can take this modifier. It means you will take an attrition roll. However, if you have no units with you, it's very good for a leader to get out of getting killed. Okay, so now here's only by simultaneous movement as an army group or by multiple intercepts or by coordinated attack card events can multiple forces enter a battle together as attackers. So that's kind of important. You can't coordinate an attack, even though the defenders get to coordinate. Okay, then there are battle cards. I don't know how these are distinguished. And if I put this in here, maybe the cards section will show me some difference between them. Nah, there may be some indication. It may say, it probably says it down on the bottom, that a card is a battle card. This is a response card. These guys have some battle cards. So these are played during the course of a battle, kind of like reactions in a lot of the games. And you decide in turn order which ones you're going to play. They're played face down until everybody makes their decision, and then they're revealed, and then there's cards that say like counter maneuver, which can cancel out, or counter measure or something, which can cancel out, they're here with, or as they are sometimes called, battle countermeasures. I wonder how they're written on the cards, if some of them say battle countermeasures and some say counter maneuver, but whatever. Once those are revealed, then you can play countermeasures to cancel them out, following the same procedure. So basically, we'll have to see how the cards work out there. For the actual combat, you're going to be looking at the unit strengths of the printed values plus any modifications, and that's going to be basically the number of dice you get to roll, I believe. Right? And you declare what you're attacking. You roll dice and you mark all hits with the losses marker on the loss chart. Oh, no, you roll the dice for the attacker. It's because it's important what strength they have or whatever. So leaders, cities, and game situations give extra battle dice. Let's see. No, each unit gets a die. I'm sorry. Each unit gets a die, and it's going to be rolling to try to roll equal to or less than its strength value at the time. And leaders, cities, and game situations can give you additional dice. They'll be at strength 3. However, they can be modified as well. Leaders get dice equal to their action rating, but only if they have combat units or a city with them. They can't just walk in there. The hits in battle are going to be voluntarily assigned to leaders if you wish. They can be assigned to other units as well, though. If you lose a king, he's lost permanently. There's some effects of terrain, etc. This is all going to be spelled out here. Some of it. It looks like there's more in the rules, but basically a river gives the defender an extra battle die. Mountains gives the defender 2. They're cumulative. They'll only count on the first round of battle. And if the battle is an interception, so here's where the rules get ambiguous. In an interception, neither side gets battle dice for terrain. Later they talk about the higher mobility forces the defender. And the only real advantage I think there is to defender is that you get these terrain dice, but I'm not positive about that. There may be other reasons defender is good, like that's the person who doesn't have to withdraw or something like that. So I'm not sure if this terrain rule for interception is meant to apply using the advanced combat rules or not. But you know what? That kind of pickiness about the rules, you come to an answer and you deal with it. It just does make it harder when you're first approaching the game because these things stick in your head and you're saying, all right, what the fuck, man? Okay, elite troops. This is Assyrian regulars. If you have a stack with Assyrian regulars, you get an extra battle die. Okay. So hits are going to have to be allocated somewhat evenly. They're allocated evenly across national bounds. So if a multinational force is fighting, they have to be allocated evenly among the different things, with the commander making the decision of where odd losses go. They also have to be allocated within that between mercenaries and regulars evenly. Then any hits you take cause routes. For every 2 hits taken, another surviving unit routes. Rounded up. However, the winner of the battle is able to take the sum of the action ratings of all his leaders that are involved in the battle and reduce the routes by that. The routed units are going to go right into the regroup box. They're not in play. They have to be repurchased, but they're cheaper to rebuy than regular units. The side who causes the most hits is the winner. However, if somebody's fully eliminated by hits, routes, and card play, the other side wins. Yeah, how do you tell which side won until the routes have been calculated? So the routes calculation is based on who won, and winning the battle is based on the routes calculation. What the fuck? You know? Basis how many hits. I would say then you apply the routes and see if either side would be eliminated by them, and then the other side wins if only one side is eliminated. But you got to make up these rules as you go, you know. Okay, if neither side won, then after both sides take their hits and routes, a second round of combat is done. Well, I would say 90% of the time you're going to have more hits happening on one side or the other. And you can track those with these. I don't think there's a counter to handle losses. I'm not sure. There are these. Maybe that's what they're meant for. Those are bow losses. What are these? Defender and attacker losses. Okay. So that's what these counters are for. I don't know where the defender is. These are unreadable up here in these tiny little counters that look exactly the same. No mas. The bow losses is because one of the special types of units is bows, and they get kind of a first shot. We'll see how. Yeah, if you've played like buckets of dice style games, you've seen that kind of thing quite often, if not other systems. If one side completely eliminates the other side, even including routes or whatever, it has overrun. If you take a city by assault or in one round of siege, it's an overrun. As long as it's not an overrun, you're done with your units that have fought are finished. Now, finished hasn't been defined anywhere, but I guess it means what it sounds like, right? There don't seem to be any markers for it, though. If you're not finished, you can keep moving, pillage the battle area, or start a siege against the city without expending any additional APs. If you're the loser, you have to retreat if you're still there. It can be into any connected, friendly area. And then there are some restrictions on retreating. You can't retreat into an enemy force. I don't think you can retreat into the space that the enemy entered from. You can retreat into areas and declare war on the country you're retreating into. Or if you have no other option, you might make the choice not to retreat there and to suffer destruction, actually. You can only retreat into an area where you could be intercepted if you have no other retreat possible. And you can be intercepted. If there's no retreat available, you take an attrition check, and then you go into the regroup boxes if you're all routed. So you're not necessarily completely destroyed. Oh boy. Okay. Siege is another big section. I'm going to pause for that. This is just very painful for me to go through, but I need to do it to relearn, to get a better grasp on the rules at this point. All right, the effort it's taking me on these is painful, but it has to be done. I'm going to be playing a game of 1846 tomorrow, supposedly. I don't think I'm going to actually get to play any of this before then. I hope it sticks. All right. I think we handled most of combat here, and now we're on to the sieges. So you have to drive the enemy out of the area, which you can do in a battle or pre-battle. I'm not sure these guys are supposed to be set up in the cities. They may all be outside the cities to begin with. I'll have to move that, obviously. Here where there's a siege, that's going to be different. Now, to start a siege doesn't cost anything. When you move into an area, when you fight a battle, whatever, you're able to continue to start a siege. I think in general, although that may be different. So overrun, it looks like you might need an overrun situation or a retreat before combat to do that. Can't keep my pipe lit. Normally, though, if you want to continue a siege, it's going to cost you an action point to do. Although, I seem to remember there being the ability, I don't know if it's a matter of, if you don't have cards, and you can't buy cards from your income, you can continue sieges. I think it may cost you, though, one action point to do that. And that can't be preempted, which is kind of interesting, because if you have enough money for a card, you can be preempted. So, like, your siege can be interfered with. But if you don't, for whatever reason, and if you don't have a card, the person with the preemption marker can't come in and jump on your siege before you get another shot to undertake it, which is just an odd little thing. Okay, the cities have this city defense factor on them. And that's going to be the number of battle dice that the city gets. These aren't going to affect field battles. When you do siege combat, any special abilities for units are ignored, except that defending bow units will get a +1 during an assault and during standard siege. We'll see there's two different kinds of ways of attacking. The Assyrians get 2 extra dice when they're involved in siege combat. This is instead of the extra die they get for all normal battles, which I don't remember there being. Yeah, I don't see it listed, but it may be a special effect listed on one of these cards or something. Here we go. You know, honestly, I'm not seeing it there either. Assyrian regulars, 1 bonus battle die, strength 3 for land battles. Okay, there it is. Each of the powers has their own special abilities. Okay. What else do we have? Multinational siege, you have to distribute the losses between the different nationalities. That's done evenly. Again, it's not done proportional to the size of the forces, which is kind of interesting. Games like Empires in Arms handle it proportional to the force size. And this makes it a little easier, but maybe unreasonable if one of the armies is very small compared to the others. A sortie can be done by the garrison, either when the besiegers try to increase a hunger siege, or during the defender's impulse by spending an action point as an action. Not sure how that's, how do you want to take this, either as a response when they try to increase the hunger siege level during their impulse, with the comma there, or during the, so, how do you parse this sentence? Do they have to pay an action point either way? I don't know. Maybe something else in the rules will state that, but again, this is the kind of ambiguity that is just throughout in terms of, and I remember there being a discussion way back when with Games Workshop, and I felt like it applied to the AWE stuff, and again, this is another European designer, that Europeans just aren't the same kind of rules lawyers that Americans are. Well, okay, but that means two people learn the game differently, right? That could be a serious issue in some cases. Okay. So a sortie's right. The city defense doesn't help in the sortie. Only one round is fought. It's like a standard field battle, but without routes. If the defenders get at least as many hits as the besieger, they've lifted the siege, and the besieger has to retreat. And then this will count as a field battle for victory points. Well, we haven't dealt with victory points from a field battle, but essentially you're going to be able to generate victory points from a number of things. One of them is field battles. Another, we saw penalties, for example, with the Assyrians ignoring punishing a tribute. There's points for conquering an enemy. I'm trying to remember what else. I think there are points for alliances because of the way the setup sheet is set up, that you get a victory point if you have an ally or something, but I don't know if those just last or if they're you made the alliance, so you get a victory point from then on. We're not going to worry too much about multinational sieges here. Okay, so there's going to be three kinds of sieges. The first is a hunger siege. This is where you're just trying to starve out the enemy without combat. You get a marker, a little number marker that indicates how long it's been going. And that will increase each time that you expend a siege activation, I guess. As soon as the siege number is 2 or more, the current defense value, as soon as the siege number is 2 more than the city's current defense value, so in this case it would have to go up 1 more space to 4, it eliminates the entire city, the entire force within the city, and the city surrenders. You don't put any damage markers for this. For capitals, I haven't really explained capitals. Capitals are these red underlying things. They have effects on surrender, conquest, and such. Now, for capitals, they're a little bit more resistant. They have to go 3 higher before they'll just surrender because they have a higher morale for this kind of thing. You can't pursue a hunger siege against a port unless you blockade the port. Samaria is not a port, even if it looks like it's on the coast. Ports are just these anchors. Okay. Assaults are going to be what they sound like. You pay an action point. It doesn't say you pay an action point for a hunger siege. It looks like it's an automatic effect. You don't have to pay an action for it. Okay, whatever. The assault is resolved as described in the siege combat procedure. Except that the defender gets to roll twice as many dice, and if the attackers do more hits than the defender, the city falls. All surviving defenders are routed. No city damage marker is taken, and there's only going to be 1 round of combat. A standard siege is attempting to reduce the city walls. The besieger pays an action point. A round of siege combat is conducted under the procedures outlined above. Outlined where above? Yeah, this isn't explained here, is it? I think it's up here where they talk about it kind of being like a normal battle. Whatever. If the attacker rolls a number of hits equal to the city's current defense value, the defense value goes down by 1. Less hits do nothing. A city may lose more than 1 defense level in a single attack. Okay. You care to explain that? There's an example that kind of does. Basically, let's say I'm fighting against defense level 3, and I roll 3 successes. Well, I've reduced it by 1. If I rolled 5 successes, I've reduced it by 1, and its defense is now 2. So now I only need those 2 more successes, and I reduced a second point. Unfortunately, the rules themselves aren't very explicit about that. You have to read the examples to figure out what the hell the designer was trying to convey with his rules. You place city damage markers. Those may be these or these. These are all negative, so I think it's them. Let's see. Again, this is like learning the AWE games. You know, the little counters sometimes don't say what they mean on them, and unfortunately in this case I'm not sure that they are explained in the game. There it is, city damage. So yes, there are these markers for the damage to the walls. So the attacker is going to take losses for trying to break the walls down, I guess. Instead of taking hits on the city, the defender can take those hits on his garrison if he wishes. I guess that's an attempt to immediately, defend up front and maybe conduct repairs to shore up the wall as well. I don't know. Force can continue an already started siege by paying an action point from income. For a hunger siege, just increase the siege marker. Okay. Did I have to pay the AP or not? I think I did according to this, but again, is that a contradiction of the paying the 1 AP, and is the fact that it's not mentioned on the hunger siege? What are they trying to express? Who the hell knows? If no AP is paid, the siege is not relieved, but does not progress either. The besiegers need to check for attrition if they cannot maintain their force by pillage or AP expenditure. Is that only if no AP is paid that I have to check for attrition? What? Phasing countries with no AP income and no cards left cannot take an impulse and are unable to continue their sieges, but they'll still suffer attrition if they can't maintain their force. Sieges can be continued in the following game turn. If you take a siege in a single round of siege, or by an assault, I think you may be able to fire this a standard siege off multiple times in one turn. I'm not sure. In one impulse. That's not clear. Then it's counted as an overrun and you can do more things. Again, lots of ambiguities here, lots of poorly phrased rules that, I'll probably play different ways at different times during my game, just because, I'll look it up and come up with a different interpretation each time. Okay. Eco-deportation. When you take an area, if there's these economy plus markers on it, that's what these are. They indicate a wealth of the area. They can be deported, in which case they're taken from the space that they're in and moved to an area that's already controlled by the conqueror. It's basically lifting up the value, the easy-to-move wealth. If a non-Assyrian country takes the area, the Eco Plus marker has to go into the nearest area with an Eco Minus marker. If there aren't any of those, he can place it anywhere in a home area. Nomads don't have home areas. They'll get 7 action points added for getting an Eco Plus 1 marker in order to build, rebuild, or buy from the regroup box. And then the Eco Plus marker is returned. I guess if they don't have units to rebuild or whatever, they're not going to get any value from it. They can't store it as APs or anything. Assyria can move the Eco Plus marker to an area of Assyria's choice regardless of any Eco Minus markers, which is to say they can take the wealth into safer regions of their country. One problem with Assyria, though, is they're right in the middle. Everything can reach them. So there aren't really safe areas. And the only places I think these can go are the square boxes. I think these circles are just like movement zones that don't have value, but I'm not positive of that. We could look back here. The map has areas. Round areas have no production. Does that mean they can't have eco? I don't know. Double rectangles have a city or fortress. Rectangle areas are used for countries with a fixed economic rating. Okay, why aren't they just round? I don't know. Maybe they need to be conquered. And then this is going to include some eco levels if you have cities. Right. You know, I don't know. It doesn't all hang together in my mind. And that's why I'm hoping, you know, maybe doing these rules will make the game make some sense to me. It vaguely sort of does. Okay. Assyria also has a deportation home card that can be used to deport eco markers even where there is no eco plus marker in the city. That'll give the area an eco minus marker, which looks surprisingly the same. I really have to like hold it at the right scale distance from my eyes to see that, because my eyes are going to shit. But you know, a lot of us are getting older. A little bit clearer. The same goes for these. These are very hard to read. You know, there's a failure to make good graphic design on the pieces to make them understandable. You can make the same complaint about AWE though, so you know, I'm not going to say terrible game because of that, but it is a major hindrance for some of us, like anyone over, I don't know, anyone liable to be playing these games. Because newcomers are just playing Euros, right? Nah, I'm sure some of you are still young. I see a 13-year-old watching a lot of my vids, but whatever. I get demographic information. It's nothing that I don't know exactly who you are or where you are, so don't worry too much about that. I just know that I do have some very young viewers, which is cool. I don't think they're too much into war games though. What do we got here? No more than 2 eco pluses can be deported at one time. No targeted area may have more than 1 eco minus marker, and no destination area may have more than 2 eco plus markers. Plus 1 markers. Which is strange because there are eco plus 2 and minus 2 markers, which I guess they just are sums. The Mede plays his eco plus markers in the Gathering the Tribes over here in the Far East box from his Gathering the Tribes. This makes them economic value that no one can take from them ever, which is kind of particularly interesting. Whew. How many more? Alright, I'm going to break for a little bit. I'm just trying to figure out, I think now that I'm done with combat, although some of these other things like conduct politics are also actions, I think this is a good time to break. We've gone, you know, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes on this video, and I think we're about halfway through the rules almost. This is the halfway point, but we've gotten a lot of the key concepts down of the mechanisms, if not, you know, everything else.